network-centric system of warfare based on information, the movement of forces to gain a positional advantage. And that's an important concept. That is not holding ground. Positional advantage refers to something much more important and decisive, and precision strike. Transformation and jointness, ladies and gentlemen, are inextricably intertwined. Thus, reorganization of the existing force is essential to this integrative process. This is not to suggest that technology is not a powerful force, as I said earlier, but global information systems and space-based surveillance and communications will not completely lift the fog of war or create perfect situational awareness. We're not going to see it. Missiles alone will not do the job either, no matter how accurate they may be, though occasionally missile strikes can be an effective military or policy tool on their own. But unless future adversaries face the threat of certain defeat by rapid invasion on the ground by robust and capable American ground forces operating within joint task forces, U.S. national security policy may be reduced to inflicting painful retaliation without really changing facts on the ground in areas of vital strategic interest. Joint task forces without powerful ground forces will not control events in areas of pivotal U.S. strategic interest. Missiles and embargoes can punish governments and societies, but only armies can reach out and fundamentally change them. This insight is important because the nation's powerful arsenal of air and naval striking power provides the basis for an Incheon-style operation nearly anywhere on the planet in a very short period of time. If Army ground forces can be transformed and integrated into this joint task force that contains this growing arsenal of global reconnaissance and strike assets for truly joint operations. Today, this is not the case, and I am very concerned that the current program will not achieve the Chief of Staff's vision of an agile information age Army. So what kind of an Army do we need? What we want is a powerful, modern Army combat force with swift deployability that arrives ready to fight, plus a genuine capacity to work with the other services in executing a broad range of missions. Breaking the phalanx provided what some have called a blueprint with a new joint operational architecture that eliminated brigades and divisions and compressed them into a new echelon of command and control. A force that was a group module, if you will, that's a little larger than a brigade but still smaller than a division. And this was designed to integrate Army capabilities into joint task forces at lower levels than the current component command approach. Actually, blueprint is not the right word, because a blueprint is static, and a transformed Army is a dynamic organization with fewer echelons and a faster decision cycle. The type of blueprint to which I am referring provides more ready deployable combat power than the Army does today. In a new organization for combat with the required mix of air, ground, maneuver, strike, logistics, and embedded, and I will only say this once, joint command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. I promise from now on it's joint C4ISR. The point I mean to convey is that we know how to build a transformed Army now. We do not need to ponder the subject for another decade. However, the first step towards transformation involves recognizing that armies transform not by re-equipping the old organization with new platforms, but by exploring and developing new joint operational concepts, organizations, and approaches to training and leadership with today's forces and equipment to attain qualitatively superior fighting power. In this sense, Army transformation depends first on organizational and cultural change, and second, on technological change. The second step requires that the Army begin to reorganize its existing warfighting assets into what I call mission-focused capability packages, or specialized modules of combat power for deep, close, or rear combat operations inside joint task forces. In breaking the phalanx, I simply called them combat groups. Combat groups are organized in garrison for the way they will generally deploy and fight. They are designed as building blocks that can be assembled into joint operational forces. The groups are integrated, cohesive, and federated to create larger forces as needed. To borrow a technological term, they are scalable. In this connection, Army transformation cannot be single service, because American air and naval power will usually reach the scene of action in crisis or conflict ahead of Army forces. Critical Army warfighting capabilities must be organized to provide joint force commanders with the Army forces they need early and without deploying redundant Army headquarters from the continental United States. The Light Reconnaissance Strike Group exemplifies this self-contained Army force that joint commanders need now. The Light Reconnaissance Strike Group is a concept that was in breaking the phalanx for a 5,000-man all-arms battle group, all arms, that integrates maneuver and strike capabilities within a new joint network-centric operational architecture. It is a dispersed mobile warfare design that can merge its maneuver and strike capabilities with a joint maritime task force or air expeditionary force to conduct decisive attack, mobile defense, peace support, or crisis response operations. It can also be deployed in less than 150 C-17 equivalent sorties without an iron mountain of logistics. Because potential future enemies on the Eurasian landmass and North African littoral will probably seek to outpace the arrival of American military power in their respective region, accelerating Army deployment timelines and readiness for action is absolutely critical. One way to achieve this aim was to develop a new Army command and control structure that could be inherently joint and would integrate into the regional unified commands. The Joint Force Land Component Command structure shown on the slide provides a standing structure in each unified command that replaces all of the single service numbered headquarters that we currently have in the unified commands. It also becomes the operational command and control device that disposes over the combat groups. As you can see, there are 4 modular headquarters with a 3-star who is the Joint Force Land Component Commander and 3 major generals, 1 for close combat operations, 1 for deep operations, and 1 for rear sustainment operations. This is a very important concept because of this growing arsenal of strike assets that we have. We possess these things inside the Army, but we have no means of easily plugging them in to the larger strike arsenal, which is usually under the command and control of the Joint Force Air Component Commander. The combat groups are made available to this regional unified command structure by rotating them through a rotational readiness system. This provides a constant pool of ready combat forces that can deploy to pre-positioned sets of equipment ashore or at sea, or in the case of the Light Reconnaissance Strike Groups, for example, with a mix of military and commercial airlift. In this rotational framework, adaptation of new technology to Army forces can become nearly continuous as these forces move through an 18-month cycle that includes a reconstitution phase. And as I will shortly cover, the importance of continually incorporating new technology in the current environment cannot be overestimated. Now, because these are new joint operational concepts, joint and combined force commanders must be free to develop concepts of operation to employ these elements, as well as the combat groups, as the mission and situation may require. Adaptation is a process, not a condition. Adaptation also extends to institutional policies on training, education, modernization, and recruiting that have their roots in the last 2 world wars. Changing Cold War personnel policies like the individual replacement system in favor of unit replacement, reorganizing Army overseas presence to support a rotational readiness or mission cycle system, and organizing Army capabilities for integration with the other services are all actions that set the stage for Army warfighting systems to co-evolve with new operational concepts and organizations. Now, for some, this may seem like too much change. But we cannot search in the margins of the past for the future of the United States Army. We should respect tradition, but not be slaves to it. The Army's future is not about divisions, brigades, or corps, but capabilities, and the capabilities that the Army uniquely brings to the fight, the joint fight. A future division-based World War II-style objective force recapitalized over the next 30 years with new platforms in the form of a future combat system of undetermined nature will not change very much. More important, the notion of an end state when Army forces will be finally transformed ignores the reality that transformation is really a continuous process, not a destination. 30 years passed between the outbreak of World War I in 1914 and the dropping of the atom bomb in 1945. We should not be surprised if we see at least as much technological change in the next 30 years as we experienced then. Transformation through reform and reorganization is designed to cope with this and this new paradigm shift to exploit air, space, missile power, and radically enhanced information processing